If you guys need any cards, packs, sleeves, anything of that nature, shop on TCG Player using my affiliate link in the description. What's good, YouTube? For those of you not aware, the Edison Format WCQ is going to be occurring this weekend. This is a format library tournament, so it's like separate from the RBETs. They're basically doing their own tournament series over there. They've had qualifiers this year that I've streamed before, so we're going to be streaming the sort of grand finale of that whole thing with the invite-only World Championship. It's going to be Saturday the 2nd. Probably like a smaller tournament, given that it's invite-only. Hopefully it won't take me all day. It'll probably just be like, I don't know how many people qualified, maybe like 40 or something. There was 3 big ones, and then there's a few extra ones, so maybe 40 people, maybe 30 people, something like that. It should be relatively small, invite only. Only the elite of the elite are going to be there. So that's exciting. So I just thought I'd make a little metagame prediction video with regards to that, since it is an event that we'll be streaming here on the channel. Talking about a number of deck lists that I expect to do well. Starting off with the one we have on the screen right here, which is Vayu Turbo. So this is probably my number one prediction. I think Vayu Turbo has proven itself to be the deck of the year. It's definitely the one that has racked up the most wins. At least I think it's got the most first place finishes. I don't know if it has the most tops or not. It definitely has the most wins though. Vayu Turbo is just like the best sort of definitive Edison good stuff pile. That's kind of how I see it. It's got all the powerful dark monsters that really dominated this Phantom Darkness era of Yu-Gi-Oh! With it's got the Dad, the Armagrepher, the Plague, and then of course all that goes really well with the Vayu stuff. It's got the Caiuses and the Raikou Hamster, which are just super definitive meta-defining cards in Edison format. It's got Dark Arm Dragon, of course. It's got Gores. It's got just with the Raikous and the Trooper, you have this crazy mill engine going on. Then you play all the power one-offs of Edison format with Burial and Brain Control and all the one-off trap cards, and of course the Dad that we mentioned. So plus you also abuse some of the powerful Blackwing cards like Gale the Whirlwind and the Vayu interactions and stuff. So I think Vayu is just sort of a mishmash of all of the best things in Edison format, and it definitely shows in the results. It's the deck, like I said, that has performed the best, and I expect that it will definitely top at the World Championship. Might even win. As I said, it was the deck that has the most wins. But in terms of what could win the tournament or top the tournament, there are also several other things that I think are in the running, and we're going to be getting into those. Another deck that I think has the potential to go far is Dragon Turbo. This is a deck that I have been much higher on lately. I think Ghost Rider has really shown that if you are someone who brings this deck, who knows how to play this deck, who brings one of these modern builds with the Reckless Greeds and stuff, you can definitely do well, and you can definitely top and even win tournaments with Dragon Turbo. It actually does have a good few wins despite pretty low representation, and definitely not topping as much as other decks. So I think Dragon Turbo could be a real sleeper threat within the meta right now. The deck is just insanely strong at what it does, very consistent at what it does, and what it does is super unfair and super toxic, but very powerful. I think that if we see someone like a Ghost Rider or a Hydro Pump, I don't know who all is qualified for this tournament. If we see someone like that show up with Dragon Turbo, I think I would not be surprised to see them make it to top 8 or even win the tournament. I think Dragon Turbo is one of the most powerful decks out there, undoubtedly one of the highest ceiling decks out there. Can just be really tough to deal with even if you are a good player. So Dragon Turbo is definitely one of the options I think to look out for that could do well at the World Championship. I think that it's a deck that's definitely evolved a lot. It was of course always a modern innovation. No one really played this particular deck back in the day, as far as I'm aware of. Maybe here and there. I think the Exodia thing was a lot more popular with Super Rejuvenation, although neither one was particularly popular. But it's a deck that's evolved a lot since it first came on the scene in Edison format. I've been very impressed with the builds that we've been seeing lately. So I think it's definitely one to watch out for, one that could do well. Just thought I'd take a minute to gas myself up a little bit, because the next list on our agenda is Chaos Fairy. This is a deck that I originally won a tournament with back in January, and people were initially very skeptical. I think a lot of people kind of dismissed it. A lot of people slept on it. A lot of people thought that regular fairies was just better or something. And I was kind of open to that possibility. I wasn't really a believer in that perspective. I kind of always thought that Chaos Fairy was, it was at least my preferred build, but at least as good as regular Fairy, possibly better. And the fact that I top 8'd at Ribbit Rulers has basically completely reinforced my belief that this is just the best way to play fairies. I think it isn't perfect, obviously. There's problems still, but I think it solves a lot of the problems with the regular pure fairy deck, which is, by all accounts, a list that just did not perform this year. I recall one top with like Cold Madness's build, and that's a very good player who had a very clean build of pure fairies in like a moderately large tournament. I think it was one of those World Championship qualifiers actually for this event that he topped with. But I think that on balance, the Chaos Fairy deck is just better. I think having all these like special summon drops means that you're not so tempo reliant. I think Decree solves a lot of problems. I think the Kaya solves a lot of problems, and I think that this is just the better build. I think it could potentially do well at this event. Now, there's lots of caveats there, because I think it is very low, the fairy deck in general, very low in terms of representation right now. So it's very likely that just no one enters with Chaos Fairy. It's very likely that no one enters with Fairy, period, in any form. So if no one enters with the deck, it's obviously not going to do well. But like, I could easily see one guy just deciding to show up with fairies, particularly with this build, and doing well at the World Championship. I mean, that's basically the story of what happened with me at Ribbit Rulers. I was the only person playing any fairy deck at Ribbit Rulers, and I showed up with Chaos Fairy, and I made top 8. So I could see it happening again. I mean, I only played this deck twice. I topped with it twice. The fairy deck otherwise didn't really perform this year at all. So I think if a fairy deck is going to make it, it's probably going to be this one. I think after my top 8 at Rulers, perhaps some people are looking again at this deck and someone might give it a try. It's a possibility. Like I said, it might just be that it gets no representation, in which case it's definitely not going to top. But it's just a possibility to look out for. So, yeah, might be one of the more dubious ones, like I said, because of the whole representation issue. But I think it is a deck that could definitely be a good choice to do well. Next deck we've got up on the list is Blackwing. And besides Value Turbo, this is probably the favorite to maybe win the event. I mean, it's a deck that has a lot of wins. Now, we do have to couch this in the fact that by far, I think Blackwings is the most played deck in the Edison Format meta right now. I think, at Rulers, it was something like 25%. It's been hovering around 25% on and off for like a while now. So there's just, especially in the online tournaments, there's just a ton of people who play Blackwings. So I think that while maybe its conversion rate and its sort of records in terms of wins isn't as impressive as something like a Vayu Turbo's, the sheer number of Blackwing decks is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and the deck is still very powerful. So like these combination of factors, I think, make it likely. I mean, it almost certainly will top. Like I said, there's going to be just like 10 Blackwing players at this small tournament, so it would be pretty shocking if it didn't top. But in terms of winning the event, obviously, it has some crazy power plays. Black Whirlwind's super strong. You still get to play Brain, Dark Armed, stuff like that. You get to play a lot of trap cards with Icarus attack. So the Blackwing archetype is just super powerful, super aggressive. It wins games. It wins games a lot more than a lot of other decks in the meta do right now. So definitely not a deck that we're ever going to sleep on, even if maybe I dispute the idea that is commonly held that Blackwing is the #1 best deck in the whole format. I don't really think it's quite there, but obviously the deck is super powerful. Obviously it is S tier, and it has a ton of wins, and it could very well take the entire tournament here, especially since a lot of very good players like to play Blackwings. So definitely a very, very likely possibility that Blackwings is what brings home the gold at the World Championship. We're going to finish out this segment with some popular decks that I actually think aren't going to be the grand winner when all is said and done. Starting off with Hero Beat here. Now, I definitely was a big believer in the Hero deck this year. It definitely did well, got a lot of tops. It had that completely dominant period in War League, which isn't really the same thing as a tournament performance, but it's still a data point, it's still a stat. However, Keegan's really dug in to the data behind Hero Beat, and yes, it does have a lot of tops, but also it is super highly represented, kind of like Blackwing's, and its conversion rate just isn't that good. But then on top of that, there's like this mysterious, even more sort of damning like condemnation of Hero Beat as potentially one of the best decks of the format, which is that despite its immense representation, despite how many times it makes it into Top Cut, which is still very often in terms of absolute numbers, Hero Beat has 0 wins at major events this entire year. I mean, it's in like every other Top Cut at least, but it just does not win. It just like simply does not win, and that definitely says something to me, which is that maybe Hero Beat is just kind of second rate compared to a lot of these other top tier decks. Like, it's consistent, it's powerful, but it doesn't do anything maybe quite as unfair as the other top tier decks can do. It potentially lacks for ceiling, which could be an issue. It has, it's just got like power plays in terms of Miracle Diva, which are good, but it doesn't have like the crazy dark armed plays. It doesn't generally play brain control at all. It's like never as annoying as Frog's Game 1 even. So like it kind of just lacks that punch that maybe a lot of the other top decks have, and that kind of shows up in the fact that this deck doesn't generally win. In fact, it doesn't generally make it to finals at all. If you look at the history of tournaments, like, you rarely see it in second either. So I think the sort of failure of Hero Beat, the low ceiling, I guess we'll call it, on Hero Beat's performance definitely reflects poorly on the deck. And also, we should consider its overall conversion rate just isn't as good as you might think based on how often it shows up in Top Cuts. It's probably even still worse than Blackwing's conversion rate, despite the fact that Blackwing's has played even more than Hero Beat. So I think that is something to consider. I think the former point about Hero Beat just like not doing well once it makes to Top Cut, like consistently. This is not just like some like insignificant, statistically insignificant data point. Like I mentioned, Hero Beat is super highly played. It's in like every tournament. It's in a ton of Top Cuts, but once it gets there, it just always dies. So I think we probably expect the Hero Beat. It could top. It's likely that it will top, given how many people play it. Maybe it won't. It's like 50-50 whether it tops or not, I think, if you look at events. But it's very likely that it could top. I do not think it's going to win. I do not think it's going to make it to the later stages of Top Cut. But maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe this will be the event that Hero Beat really pops off and actually takes a dub. So we'll just have to see. And the final deck we're going to be talking about here is Frogs. This is a deck that, unlike Hero Beat, it actually does have a few tops. I don't think it has as many as some of the other decks on this list. Certainly not like Vayu Turbo or Blackwings. Probably not Dragon Turbo either. Although I might have to double check on that one because Dragon Turbo isn't played nearly as much as all these other decks. But yeah, I'm not really sure what it is with Frogs. I just think that it's a deck that tops a lot. I think it is likely that it will top. Same deal with Hero Beat. But in terms of winning the event, I think it's just hard to win like the post-board die roll. The die roll, is that really the right word? Like the post-board gamble of Frogs enough times in a row to win a tournament, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, if your opponent just draws enough side deck hate, like, you're just going to lose with Frogs. That's kind of how it is. You've just got that sort of play style that's countered by a lot of stuff, and everyone is always metagaming for Frogs. There's always, like, DDV, Pulling the Rug, Fossil Dyna, Vanity's Fiend, Mask of Restrict, just all kinds of stuff that really screws you over in the side decks, and you're definitely liable to just get, like, aggroed down if they draw their stuff and you don't draw the outs. Like, it does become, like, a draw the out minigame kind of thing post-board, although that's especially a toxic aspect in the mirror that I like to talk about. But overall, I think Frogs is a good deck. I do not think it's going to take the W. I haven't looked at the stats in depth. I know it has like 2 wins at least this year at major events, but not a whole lot from what I can remember if you look at it in like totality. So I think Frog's probably a little less likely to win. It could win for sure. I think it's more likely to win than Hero Beat is, but I do think it is less likely to win than like the the decks that we initially mentioned in this video. So yeah, that pretty much wraps my feelings up about a lot of the top tier decks, what I think is going to win, what I think is probably going to peter out once it makes it to top cut. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and yeah, looking forward to this World Championship event. Definitely going to have a lot of fun streaming it. Be sure to tune in on Saturday. Peace out. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Furthermore, if you enjoy my content, you should think about becoming a channel member. You get access to tons of bonus content, and it's a great way to help support the channel.